Cheers. Okay, folks, so I know how hard it is post-lunch. So we're going to try and perk you up a bit and make this as interactive as possible because I know how sleepy I get after lunch. Okay, so who worked for a security vendor? Okay. InfoSec teams? Okay. Sysadmins? And what are the rest of you? Aside of humans? No? Okay. You're very quiet. Okay, cool. So, first of all, a bit about me. I like to scare people. This is another key post-lunch technique. Scare people with a giant face. Okay, so I'm a lead data scientist at a security company called SensorNet. We're working on a unified platform for web, multi-factor, and email, and more to come. I've been a long-time community organizer and presenter, mainly in the sort of Microsoft, don't hold it against me, in the Microsoft and the R worlds. And for my sins, Microsoft made me a data platform MVP. For the people who came to the R session today, we're starting to organize worldwide conferences, kind of similar to the London B-Sides and the whole B-Sides franchise, and they'll be free on Saturdays. Very cleverly named as a consequence. I put a lot of stuff on GitHub, so all the materials from today, including my workshop earlier, and various other presentations can all be found on there. I blog, I tweet, so if you want to contact me afterwards, you can. And I have little business cards down there as well. Okay, so what we're going to cover today is I wanted to look at ways we can improve how we're doing things with our security data. So we're going to look at the actual data problems that we maybe have right now, and then look at people, processes, and tools. So the key things that make up how something gets handled. Okay, so data. We have an increasingly large amount of devices between BYOD and Internet of Things. There is more bits of data traveling around. And with all those disparate streams, it's getting quite tough to actually bring it all together and analyze it. So that's one of the key challenges for me is how do we get stuff in a consistent format, and how do we even get things like consistent date times together. Software didn't come out too well, but the cybersecurity software market is massively growing, and we've got new vendors all the time. So it's no longer, you're never just going to have one bit of security software. You're always going to have multiples, and you need to get that data out of those different systems and into something where you can combine them together. Because yes, many attacks are on a single front, but that's not always true. And being able to get data and provide that broader viewpoint to supplement the information from one front with another, very handy. And we need to be able to access that from our software. And then the World Economic Forum produced like a Gartner Magic Quadrant of risks. And one of them is cyber attacks. You know, it's a leader in world risk. So we need to be increasingly vigilant. And I'm sure I don't need to kind of evangelize on that point. Otherwise, you wouldn't all be here learning how to do your jobs better. All right, so what people should be or can be involved in helping your organization get better with data? So one of the key people is actually your BI analysts. Do people have business intelligence departments or report chimps, or you can call them any disparaging name you like, but their job is to make numbers look pretty? Yeah? Okay, so these people, their job for a living is to get data from different sources and put it into a consolidated format and build reports and get insight out of it. So if you're stuck and you want to get more value out of your data, then it's worth going and feeding them some cakes, bribing them, and getting them to help you. Because they are experts in what you're trying to achieve in terms of getting the data consolidated. And then you've got data scientists like me, or, you know, I'm missing my Mac and my blazer and I'm not from San Francisco, but they're statisticians, data miners. These are people who can help you get unexpected insight out of your data. But they generally need the data to be consolidated in some format, because most data scientists are not data engineers, yet another hip term, and they find it difficult to bring that data together. And it's always worth remembering that when we're actually working on being better with how we're processing our data, is thinking about who the specific audiences are. The information I give to my sysadmin is very different to the information I give to my CEO about the latest level of denial of service attacks that are coming into the business. And again, this is actually where a BI person can help you get more practice at pitching the right level of notifications and content. Because a sysadmin needs things that they can act upon to make the system safer. Your InfoSec people usually need to be able to verify that actions are taken and work in often an audit type capacity. And your CXOs need high-level reassurance or their pants being scared off so that they give you plenty of budget. So the processes. I really like coffee. I wish we had more coffee. You all could do with some right now, because like me, you're feeling that slump that's trying to get you to just snooze. But to be able to get better with data, we need processes in place that actually help us, A, make sure we don't miss anything, B, we do it in usually in a compliant and auditable fashion, and we need to be able to actually, ideally, move fast and do that whole agile BI, agile development type stuff. So the first thing is, how do you construct that wider view from a process perspective? And the aim is to have a regular check that says, can I get some data that supplements my existing information, so gives me an added dimension? Like if I can manage to get have I been pwned data via the API, can I be combining that with my AD to be looking at potentially compromised accounts and be able to act on them? So I can supplement my existing data with another source to get something that is really difficult otherwise. Can I get data that compensates for a flaw in my existing process? So with SensorNet, we have agents that sit on people's machines. But that doesn't help when people are trying to get to assets that are from machines that aren't on the network or known on the network. So we can compensate by adding in the access logs from those assets to identify the gaps in the agent deployment process. And then inform. So if we've got lots of activity about that a specific person is performing, then they might look quite dodgy. You see this person going to Dropbox and a whole load of other FTP sites and things. And you think, what the hell are they doing? Why are they going to these sites? And it's only when you actually bring in something like their AD, like the AD schema, and see that they are that they work with partners or brokers, that you see that actually they're just disseminating information as they'd expect. So being able to give that added dimension really helps. Okay, and when you're building that view, there's a few things that you really need to focus on. One is the ETL pipeline, so that's extract, transform, load. Standard like database jargon. And what your process needs to take into account is, how do you get data? Ideally programmatically. What transformations do you have to perform to get it into an acceptable format? And then where are you storing it? And of course, when you're producing all this information, there's a lot of potential for personally identifiable info to be going through. So with SensorNet stuff, we monitor application actions. So we actually get a lot of email addresses and potentially sensitive comments between people in the details. So we have to be very careful about how we secure that data. And your own internal data sources need to be thought about in a similar way. And then time. It's really hard to get an accurate chain of events when all your servers are reporting different times. Okay? It's actually quite hard, and you should give some thought to it as to how to make sure that everything is reporting the right time. And acquisition and prototyping. So, as I said earlier, there are a huge amount of software vendors out there now, and there's more of us every day. What is going to have to become more important is avoiding vendor lock-in, but also always being ready to pick up a new one. So instead of going, I am a Microsoft shop, and then never ever buying another piece of software unless Microsoft has shipped it, it's being able to work out what works for you. I would say the open source solutions are always a great place to start. So if you're worrying about security, try the Metasploit open source edition or the community edition and use that to pen test your stuff. Don't use open sources and community editions lower cost of acquisition to be more willing to try stuff out. It gives you more data, it gives you more insight, and hopefully it gives you better security by being able to try a lot more. And that comes with the thing of prototyping. Even big vendors will, depending on your size and how much you can schmooze them, will usually give you a proof of concept time. If you can work at trialing stuff to see what data, what insight you can get out of it, and then if it doesn't work out, be willing to dispose of it, that's a good thing. I have seen a lot of companies though that because it can take a long time to implement a piece of software, they then feel almost obliged to stick with it. It's a sunk cost fallacy. It's much better to jettison something, even if you put a lot of effort into it, than it is to keep going with something substandard. Okay, on to some of the tools. You need a database. This doesn't have to be a relational one. So if you're a NoSQL fan, it doesn't have to be tables. But when we're bringing data from lots of different streams together, you need a place to store it, and you need to be able to add the supplementary information. So if you're looking at, if you have your weblogs and you're doing something pretty cool, like keeping an eye out for vulnerabilities noted on Twitter with hashtags, or if they get a cool logo and a nice website, then you need to be getting that Twitter pipeline and then having an ETL and a process that then says, these are the things I need to look for in my logs, and then go through and look for them. It's a lot easier if that data is all in one place. And ideally, well thought about. I'm still very dubious. I don't know if, has anybody heard the buzzword data lake? Okay. Well, there's this great new concept. Dump it all in and index later. Okay, the developer might have left 3 months after setting up the dump, and now nobody knows what on earth that data means, but it's okay, we'll get the schema. That's a bad idea. You need to know what's going on with how your data is collected, how it gets stored, and how it gets shipped to you. You need that provenance, you need that metadata. It's all very well having a non-relational database, but you should spend the time when you set up the data inserts into it to actually specify what's likely to come from the source that you're working with. Dashboarding. Dashboarding is really important for being able to get stuff out. Part of it is being able to distill your alerts down. So especially if you have a consolidated system, but even things like SCOM and Splunk and stuff, and with Kibana, with Elasticsearch, you have the ability to integrate alerts from a load of different systems. Picking which charts and things to see is quite important. And again, this is where a BI analyst can come in handy if you have one lying around, because if they're a good BI analyst, then they should know solid data visualization principles and should be able to help you inform the audience for the dashboard. So if it's a dashboard for you and you're a techie who doesn't like charts and you really like your tables of data, then make it that way. But if it's for your InfoSec team, what do they need? How do they need it represented? And if it's for your CEO, you need to usually strip away as much detail as possible and just leave some gauges. I'm not too cynical about them, I hope. All right. So you can buy them in. I'm actually quite a fan of the Microsoft Power BI stack at the moment. It has this fantastic Q&A capability. So once you set up your data and you have some visualizations, people can actually write queries against the dashboard. So they can say, how many 500 errors did I get on this page yesterday? So you can do a lot of exploratory analysis just from the dashboard. So people don't, you widen up the audience of the people who can perform the analysis. And then, if it's something of interest, something that's worth tracking, then you can pin it to the dashboard. So you can evolve dashboards without making code changes. On the flip side, I actually quite like code-based dashboards. So I use a lot of R, and there is a package called Shiny, which makes interactive applications without you ever having to code HTML, CSS, or configure Apache. It is run on pixie dust. I don't understand how it works, but it is super impressive. And all you need to be able to code to use it is R. So you can set up your data sources, bring them in memory or dump CSVs. You can produce regular reports in it. And you can have a whole lot of different parameters to make life easier. So people can do exploratory analysis, and they can do configurations and things like that. That's great if you want to specifically target a view of your data. Okay, elk. I kind of felt like instead of showing the web page that I should show an actual picture of an elk. Is anybody working with Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana at the moment? Okay. So for those of you who aren't, if you need log data, the elk stack is really handy. It can do streaming data, and it can do bulk uploads. So Logstash is your log shipping tool. It's the bit that gets your data from A to B in the format you need. So if you need a correct, if you have a weird date time stamp because some developer thought he wasn't going to do epoch, he was going to do seconds since 1900 for some crazy reason, you can specify that. So you can solve a lot of issues as the data's in transit. Then you've got Elasticsearch, which is, it basically builds indexes over your data that you can tell it which indexes and make it a very fast search. So it's great for exploratory work. And then Kibana is a dashboarding system that sits over the top of it and gets data real time and shows you, does more dashboarding stuff. And it's quite easy for people to build and configure their own once you've set up the right connections to Elasticsearch. It's, anybody using Docker? I am working on hitting all the buzzwords, by the way, okay? Well, Docker is a great tool. It means I never break my machine. It means I just break my Docker container. And that's okay, because I break it and I start again. So Docker is like a very light VM. And you can get a Docker container with the Elk stack in and just basically say, hey, I want to play with Elk in a command line, and it'll spin up and you can play. So it can be really easy to get started with and prototype. You guys know about Splunk and stuff. Microsoft are actually doing some interesting things. They're keeping it quiet, but their operational log stuff is quite interesting, and they're also fishing in the same space that SensorNet are, because you can upload logs from what your users have been doing and identify what cloud applications they've been using. So that can be quite handy, and you can set it up to automatically ship the logs too. And then there was no way I was going to cover the myriad and plentiful tools that are available that help you manipulate data better into a form that gives you insight. But there are many, and there will always be the right one for you. Whether you have operational constraints about whether the data can go on-premise or on the cloud, whether you have technological constraints, budgets, things that are new and shiny that you want to play with, there'll be considerations. Okay. I left it as the data deluge. So it's about time for me to wrap up, get off the stage, and I've generally kept you all awake, which is good. I'm impressed with myself, and nobody's died yet, so this is good. So there's a lot of data, and if you're not using it, then it's of no value. So if you're not using it, lose it, save yourself the storage costs, or get using it. Put something simple over the top of it to begin with. Try out an open source tool. A little prototype can be a real use case as to whether something's of value to you. People, in much the same way that everybody bribes the sysadmin with cakes, I highly recommend bribing your BI people to help get that knowledge and get that helping hand. Developers can actually also help in this respect because a lot of them will have been working with non-relational search capabilities. So if you're looking to do Elasticsearch, which is based on Lucene, then a developer might come in handy. Focus on who you're delivering the data to and in what format. Don't overwhelm people with the wrong info and the wrong level of detail. Always make sure you're right if management decisions are being made on it. Okay? You will lose so much. It's really important to be right when you're providing people with information. So if you can script it and write unit tests and things against it, that is a fantastic way to go. And that's a big reason why I use R as opposed to any GUI-based solution, because I can code it, I can test it. And then tools, there are a lot of tools out there. Ones that help exploration are very useful. You need somewhere, ideally, with your data to be consolidated into. And then you need or you don't need, but specialized tools that help you do specifics can be very, they can save you a lot of money in the long run if they help stop something big. Okay, so this is available online, and a lot of my other materials are as well, so they've all got links, so if you want to learn a bit more about R or Microsoft or this and that, then you can go and do it, and I present a lot of links to other things. Just try it, prototype something, run Metasploit, give it a go, see what you can break, see what you can solve, and do keep in touch. This is my first security conference. I come from a finance background previously, and I never wanted to attend their conferences. So yeah, I'm always looking to make new contacts in a very fun industry. So thank you all very much for listening to me, for staying awake, and have fun for the rest of the day.